What's up, everybody, and welcome to Mitch's Shorts, where I make short videos about big topics and also make underwear jokes, such as this. You should tell your friends to go check out my shorts. They're really good. They're on YouTube, and you can subscribe to Mitch Norman, but do not subscribe to Mitch's Shorts. That is somebody who, I guess their name is Mitch, and they make videos of themselves playing video games. Those are not short videos about big topics. And those are not my shorts. Okay, here we go. Go on today. Last video, check it out. We start talking about mere Christianity and this moral standard inside of us that we've all broken. Okay, so today we keep going and we're going through mere Christianity a little bit at a time, okay? And we are going to talk about the reality of this standard inside of us. We can say, I don't know if this is a real thing, Mitch. I don't know if this is a real standard. I don't know if this is something that's real, that you believe that someone or something much greater and beyond us put inside of us, or is it just something we learn over time? But I would say that it's absolutely beyond this world because we've had it for as long as anyone's had, history. And we do really odd things because of the moral standard inside of us, okay? As C.S. Lewis brings up in his incredible book, Mere Christianity, which is what we're going through, he says that these odd things we do, these peculiar things we do, are actually proof of a moral standard inside of us. For example, if someone were to accidentally trip us, knock us down, and even cause pain to us, we would be angry that it happened for a moment, but we wouldn't truly be angry with them because their intent was not to harm us. And yet, if somebody tries to trip us on purpose but fails, so there's no pain at all, no harm that's come about us, and yet we know their intent, we would call that wrong, and we would be very angry, even though no harm came about to us. So these weird things we do speak into a moral standard that make certain things right in some situations and certain things wrong in other situations. It's really interesting. It's peculiar, the things we do and the ways we act. And it points to the standard inside of us, like I said in the last video, that is not an instinct like another key on the piano, but yet a standard that controls all the keys on the piano or tells us which key on the piano to play. It's really interesting. So I believe this is a real thing. And we know it's real because of the weird things we do and the ways we act and the fact that we believe in right and wrong, even though our parents teach us what is right and wrong. There's something deeper way down inside of us and beyond us that comes back to a law that was put inside of us, I believe, by some type of supreme being or divine thing, okay? And we're going to dig down and see what that thing is. There are basically two views from where that divine thing comes from or where we came from or how this all came to be. And number one, the view is, as C.S. Lewis talks about in his book, Mere Christianity, the materialistic view. And this is the view that, regardless of how you describe it coming about, that there was basically a big happening. You could call it a big bang if we wanted to. But there was a big happening where all of this came into existence and it just happened. The problem is that if all this just happened, it's really peculiar that we have such a keen sense of what is right and wrong. Remember, we argue constantly going around and around about what is right and what makes something right in this scenario and that scenario. And there are courts of laws, and this is a very complicated thing. And yet in our heart, we really agree on the basic things. And we know that there are those of us who understand morality better than others, just like some of us understand math better than others. But where did this thing come from? Where did this morality come from? It doesn't seem to be something we've learned over time, because you could say that our morals have gotten worse over time in some way. It seems to be something that was placed inside of us. Because as bad as morals have gotten in the past, we always seem to bounce back and find this compass that points us to true north and what is right and what is wrong. So if this world just happened, that really doesn't explain where my moral standard came from and where your moral standard came from. And even worse, if this world just happened, then I probably could do whatever wrong I wanted. And the only thing that's holding me back is this moral standard you say that you have inside of you, that you got from nowhere, if this all just happened. It creates a real issue in where we came from and why we believe the things we believe. But we won't spend too much time there because we're going to keep going. And remember, these are short videos about big things. Okay? So either it just happened and the real issue is that still doesn't help me understand where this moral standard comes from because it's clearly beyond human ideas. All right? Or maybe there was something greater. Maybe there's a religious view and that this morality came about from some type of God, that this world was created and that this God who believes so strongly in right and wrong and good and evil that he put a moral standard inside of us to guide us. The view makes a lot of sense about why we believe so fiercely about what is right and what is wrong and why we're willing to argue and go around and around and try to understand our morality and what is right and what is wrong. The problem with this view is that none of us can verify God's existence with science or with physical evidence outside of God moving within each of us. We can't find footprints. We can't find his house. We cannot find physical evidence. And yet what C.S. Lewis offers to us is that this God will never be proved by science because he's not physical in the first place. Essentially, science needs physical things to prove something exists. But this God's not physical. There will never be physical existence of this God or physical evidence, of this God's existence because he's not physical at all. He's like a spirit or a mind that has put this thing in our hearts. So if we go out looking for physical evidence of this God, we're not going to find it. And yet, in God's brilliance, in God's grace, and in God's unbelievable forethought and mastery of his creation, it seems that he put a map back to him inside each of us. That when you look in your heart and you think about what is right and what is wrong and why do I believe so fiercely about what is right and why do I hate so much what is wrong, it goes back to a supreme being, something divine, putting this code, this moral standard inside my heart. And so I have to go and dig some more and say, well, who is this God and where did he come from? And at the very end of these two chapters we're talking about in book 1, chapters 3 and 4, C.S. Lewis uses this brilliant illustration. There's a van out there. And of course, this van didn't exist 70 years ago, so I'm having to modify this a little bit to our world. But there's a van out there. It's called a Grumman LLV. And if you see a white Grumman LLV going down the road, and if they have a red stripe and a blue stripe down the side with a little eagle decal on it, and you see this Grumman LLV going down the road and stopping house to house and dropping letters or envelopes in mailboxes, then you know that inside those envelopes there are letters, bills, or some type of correspondence. You could argue, or I could argue with you, that, hey, you actually don't know that that's letters, bills, or some type of correspondence intended for that person because you've never seen inside those envelopes. And yet you could argue back with me and say, no, I don't need to see inside the envelopes to know that that's a letter, a bill, or some type of correspondence, because whenever I get these envelopes, I know inside of me it's a letter, it's a bill, it's some type of correspondence. Well, in the same way, I can't look inside every person, but I know I can look inside of me. Just like you can look inside of you, and you know there's a right, you know there's a wrong, but you don't know why you believe that or where it came from. And sure, your mom and dad taught you the intricacies and the nuances of right and wrong, just like your teachers or coaches did. But the basic idea of right and wrong, it came from something that's inside of you. And I believe this is a blueprint, a map back to your Creator. And this idea of right and wrong tells us a lot about him, that he really believes in doing right and loving what is right and carrying out what is right. And he really believes in exacting justice on what is wrong and extinguishing and getting rid of the things that are wrong in our world. And yet, like we began this whole video series, there's a moral standard that we all believe in, we all have, and yet we've all broken it. So, as we kind of finish here, and I've made a short video a little long, I would just say to you guys, what do we do with this? where do we go from here? We have to wrestle with this idea that there's a God who's put a moral standard inside of us, and he has put this inside of us because he believes in right and he hates what is wrong. All right, we're going to keep going with another short here in a little bit. Make sure you tell your friends to just subscribe to Mitch Norman, and make sure you tell them to check out my shorts. I love you guys. Thank you guys for checking this out. Y'all have a great week.